Welcome to this video about activating the new Power BI embedded reports from the July 2017 update for Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. I will walk you through the procedures you need to perform to activate the Power BI embedded reports following my documentation, which is always available in the latest version on OneDrive on the link which you can also see here. The first thing we will do is we will go to the Microsoft Azure portal. I'm using an MSDN subscription here with no resources at all. So if I can go to all resources here, you will see there is nothing deployed in this Azure subscription at the moment. First step we will do is we will create a new SQL database. Therefore, we'll go to the SQL databases tab here, click on it, and add a new SQL database. We will give the database a name. I will use the same name as the standard entity store database, which is AXDW. I'm using my subscription. I will create a new resource group. As a source, I'll select new blank database. I'll need a new database server for my SQL database. So I'll click here on configure required settings. I'll give the database, the SQL server, a name. Use the same name as my resource group. As a login, I will use the standard local administrator account for my OneBox demo environment, which is a little bit different than what was previously in my document because we're not using AX local admin anymore, but a distinct administrator account. I will use the same password as in my subscription. Confirm the password, and I'll give it a location. I'm using the same location as where my OneBox demo environment is set up. So I'll click select here. At the moment, I'm not getting to use the Elastic Pool, and I'll get pricing tier, give it a little bit lower at the moment because in my MSDN subscription there's not so many bugs on it. So I'll just lower it down to S1, which would be okay for this demonstration. And for the database size, I'll go for 100 gigabytes. You should take care that you are not using less than 10 gigabytes, because if you deploy all of the entities in the entity store, it will take more than 5 gigs. So please select more than 10 gigabytes. Click on apply. And I'm using the standard collation, which is SQL Element General CPU1 CIAS, and create the database. While this is creating, I'll stop the video for a second. Or not. Yes, I will. All right, my new SQL Azure database has been created successfully with the name I specified. I also got a notification here. And the next step will be to create a new Power BI workspace collection. In order to do so, I will click on New and search for template deployment. Here it is. Click on this and click on Create. As a next step, I'll click on Build Your Own Template in the editor. And I will delete everything which is here and copy and paste the template script, which you can find in my document. The only thing I'll do here, of course, I'll give it a real name, sticking with my PBI EMB HW. You can see here that as a location, I also specified North Europe, but you can of course use any other location you want. And I'll click on Save. You can use here an existing or a new resource group. I'll create a new resource group just for the sake of it. So just only one. I agree to the terms and conditions, and I click on Purchase. You can see the deployment succeeded, and I have created my Power BI workspace collection. I go to all resources here. I can see that I have now my SQL Server, my SQL database, and the Power BI workspace collection. After this has been created, I have to copy two values, the two keys. So when I open my Power BI workspace collection and I'm going to the access control, to the access keys, you can see two keys here, and I will just copy them for using them later. And while I'm doing that, I'm just pausing the video for a second. I've copied the two access keys for using them later. And just as a reminder, after you've created your first Power BI workspace collection using the template deployment, you can further on just create it by using the new button. I'll just show you quick how this looks like. And I go to new and I'll select now Power BI workspace collection. And I now click on create. I have this new button here, this new link that was not available before I did the template deployment. But as I did this once now in the subscription, I can click on this and just create a new workspace collection here without having to use the editor from the template deployment. So that's everything we had to do in the Azure portal. So I'll close this down now and I'll switch over to my OneBox demo environment. I'm here in the SQL Server Management Studio. Now I'll connect to my database, which is hosted on Azure. So that's the name of the server that I specified, windows.net, and I'm using SQL Server Authentication. I'll use the same user it, which is also the administrator account. I'll use the same password for this and connect to my SQL Azure database. Now I'm connected, and I have to create some new logins here. So I'll go to the database. I'm going to do a new query. Just make sure that you're at this moment in the master database. I'll copy the SQL script from my document, and while I'm setting up the correct passwords, which is the same passwords as in my LCS, I'll just pause the video for a second, and after that I'll come back. So I've copied and pasted the passwords for these two logins from my LCS environment. I've just moved over the properties window so you cannot see them. And as the next step, I'll just execute these commands and close down the SQL query window. Move this back now here. So just to check, as you can see here now in my logins, I have those 3 users, the one I created in the Azure portal, and the 2 I just created using my SQL script. Next step, I'll create another query window, and at this time I'll creating users in my database. So I'm copying this now from my script. Create user from those logins, and please make sure now that you are creating those in the AXDW database, so the one that we will be using. I'll click on execute, completed successfully, and if I'll check now here in my database under security and users, I have those 2 users here. Those have not been here before. And the last step here in the SQL Server Management Studio is to give those users some new roles. I'll just do a new query, copy the SQL script from my document. So auto role, the admin will be a DB owner and the runtime user will be data reader. Please again make sure that you are in the correct database, so in the AXDW database. And I'll click on execute. Completed successfully. The next step that we will be doing is to tweak or change the web.config file for the AOS service. I'll go down here, and for this I'll go to my start menu, go to Notepad, right click on it and say run as administrator. This is important because if you're not running Notepad as administrator, you will not be able to save back the file. So run as administrator, now file open. I'm searching for my file, so this is on J, AOS service, webroot, showing all files, and here is my web config file. I'll open that. So as a first step, I will search for the name of my entity store server. I'll just search for DW server, which is by default the name of your local server. But I will change this to the server I created on the Azure portal, which is ppi-embhw database.windows.net. So now we're telling the AS server where to look for the AXDW database. So the name of the database would be specified here. We don't have to change this because we have created it with the same name as SQL Azure database. The next step, just go down to the end of the add key settings. This is here. So just before app settings are ended, and I will copy again some values from my script. See this here. So these are those 5 lines. So I will, as next step, copy the 2 access keys from my Power BI Workspace collection in SQL Azure. The 2 keys I've copied before. The AP URL is the correct one, and is Power BI embedded enabled will be set to true. And of course, I will also have to set the name of my workspace collection. And while I'm doing this, I'll just pause the video for a second. All right, I have changed the values accordingly. Scroll a little down so you can see my 2 access keys. So here's the name of my workspace collection, enable true, the API URL, and the 2 lines above this are the access keys. So I will go and save the web config file, which is going through because I'm using Notepad as an administrator. The next step will be to restart the IIS server. So for this, I'm just opening a command prompt as an administrator and say IIS reset -restart. While it's doing this, I'm going to the services, because we also have to restart the batch service. So internet services successfully restarted. And here I'll look for Microsoft Dynamics 365, Unified Operations, Batch Management Service. Just open this bigger, Batch Management Service, and I'll just click the Restart Service button. So both the IIS server, hence the AOS service, and the batch service have been restarted. And now I will open up my Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations client. All right, so here I have my Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations client. I'm in the USMF database, and I will go to the entity store now. Just searching for entity here, going to the entity store, and just for the sake of it, I will just select one transaction here, one entity here, which is the asset transaction measure, which should enable us later to use the fixed assets Power BI embedded report. I'm selecting just this measure here and click on refresh. So this will be automatically be set up as a batch process. That's the reason why we have to restart the batch service. So I'll just click on OK here, and this is added to the batch queue. So just a way to check when it is finished. I can go to my batch jobs, bring this, my batch jobs, and we should see one batch job with the name deploy measurements running as soon as my window opens. Here it is. Just scroll down a little bit, and here it is. It is executing, and while this is executing, I will stop the video. All right, my batch job for deploying the measurement has ended. And just as a little troubleshooting tip, I could check now if this actually has created tables and views in my SQL Azure database. So for this, I will be going back to the SQL Management Studio. And I can open up tables, and you can see here that some of the tables have been created and also some of the views. So I can also check here and select some of the rows, and I can see that I have actually values in my SQL Azure database, which is used as an entity store. So this is one of the things you can check. If you have values here and tables here, you have made most of the steps correctly. So created correct SQL Azure database with all the necessary passwords, etc. And as a last thing, we will now go back to the client and open up the fixed asset management workspace. So here we have the fixed assets management workspace, and as soon as I click here on the analytics tab, the client will start deploying the Power BI embedded workspace to my Power BI workspace collection on Azure. So there's no additional deployment step involved. Just click here on Analytics All Companies, and it will deploy the report. When it's done for the first time, as it has to deploy the report, it will take some seconds, but you can see here, this is my Power BI embedded report containing values using on a OneBox demo environment, which is also running on Azure, of course. And with this, I will conclude this video. I hope you find it valuable, and see you next time. Bye.